Hey everyone, welcome to Wargamer Online's Introduction to Warhammer 40k 8th edition. In this series what we're hoping to do is to just work through each phase one by one, create a separate video for each one, just talk through the basics, go through the core rules and try and introduce everybody to it, both people coming out of 7th edition just to get an idea of what they're to expect in gameplay, but also to introduce new players to the game as well. So I think the best thing is we'll get started.
Yep.
Hi everyone, so first we're going to have a look at movement phase, and what we want to do is just work through section by section of the core rules. Movement phase is the first of the phases, and they break it down in the rule book in a few areas. They talk about movement, minimum move, enemy models, falling back and advancing. So we just want to have a look at how that plays out. First and foremost, what they say is a model can be moved in any direction to a distance in inches equal to or less than the move characteristic on the datasheet.
Right, okay.
No part of the model's base or hull, looking at the flyer there, can move further than this. Cannot be moved through other models or through terrain features such as walls, but can be moved vertically in order to climb or traverse scenery.
Okay.
So how would that work in practical sense? This squad here are
Intercessor squad.
Intercessors, and they have a movement of 6. Is that right, Mike?
6-inch movement, yeah.
Right, okay then. So if I wanted to get this Marine on top of this crate for a better line of sight to shoot an enemy unit at the other side of the board, it's going to take me kind of a 3-inch move to get to it, 2-inch move to get to the top, leaving me out of my 6 inches, 1 inch left. So I can just about make it onto the top of the crate. And there I've used my 6-inch move up.
Yeah.
Now, I need to remain in coherency. So all of my units got to remain within 2 inch, except vertically,
okay,
which is 6 inch. So as long as they're 6 inches below or 2 inches horizontally, we're okay.
Okay.
So in the instance of these guys, that's okay. They've got a 6-inch move. In fact, it's 2 inches there, 2 inches up, which is 4 inches. So again, I could even get a guy alongside him, really. And we'll just bring these up here. In fact, let's just double check that. Yes, plenty of movement. And there we are. I've moved my squad. And they've climbed over terrain and all the rest. Now, it does say if a model can fly, like the Eldar Crimson Hunter, then essentially I don't need to worry about not moving through models either. I can just go straight over everything. But there is a rule that I can't kind of put my base within 1 inch of another model.
Is that at the end of your movement?
It is at the end of your movement,
okay,
but in the instance of this, it has a 20-inch minimum movement and up to 60-inch maximum movement. So I literally can just zoom across the top of here, not having to worry about terrain, not having to worry about models. And as long as I've got space to place it down, then I'm good to go.
Okay.
Now, it's worth mentioning, we'll have a look at some more details later, but each one of these flyers has specific rules about how much you can turn and those kind of things. So, for instance, the Crimson Hunter's a really agile flyer, and I can do a 90-degree turn at the start of my movement, or up to a 90-degree turn, make my movement, and then make a turn at the end of it as well.
So you're getting 2 pivot moves.
So I'm getting 2 pivot moves with that one. Now, some are restricted, some are slower and more cumbersome.
Yeah, because each unit has their own characteristics on movement. So you're going to have some, say for instance, Terminators, they're going to have less movement than a normal Intercessor squad.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, while we're talking about flyers, let's have a look at that minimum movement. So it says that some models have the fly move, that have fly as a keyword, sorry,
yep,
have 2 move characteristics, and basically that's 2 numbers. So in the instance of the Crimson Hunter, it says 20 and 60, and that's at full wounds. It actually slows down like some of the units do now in 8th edition. But at full wounds, when it's nice and healthy, it has to move a minimum of 20 inch, but it can move anything up to 60 inch, which is tremendous. I mean, it's just
yeah, that's quite a big
gone.
distance.
But There is a payoff to this. If I'm to leave the board at any time, then it counts as destroyed. If I can't make my minimum movement at any time, it counts as destroyed. So I've really got to plan ahead. Where am I going to position my flyer? Where am I going next? Am I going to be able to make a turn and keep on the board?
So you are looking at future turns when you're doing your movement as well.
Absolutely.
That you don't want to be going off the board.
So for instance, if I was to be in the corner of a board, if I was foolish enough to move to the corner of a board, even with my 90-degree turn, that I'm going to fly off that corner. There's nothing I can do about that, and then it constitutes as destroyed. The next part of movement is enemy models. All models in the same army constitute as friendly. Models controlled by an opposing player are constitutes as enemy models.
Okay.
When you move a model in the movement phase, it may not be moved within 1 inch of an enemy model. So, for instance, if you were to move these...
Interceptor squad.
Interceptor squad. So, actually, do you want to do that? Because we've got a movement here and we've got an enemy there, so they're probably within range. Is that right?
If I take over for the Interceptor squad, now these guys have a 10-inch movement characteristic, which means they can move quite quickly across the board. So I'm just going to move these up this way, making sure I'm staying 1 inch away from the enemy model just here.
Now this is the great thing, they've done their full move, they're fast, which is great, they're covering distance, and you've not, and we'll come on to this, you've not used advance, because there's no need, these guys are so fast, aren't they? Right, the next thing then, as long as these guys didn't approach within 1 inch, is falling back. What it basically says is if you start your movement phase within 1 inch of an enemy model, in other words something that belongs to the opposing player, essentially the only move you can do is a fall back. And if you fall back, you can't do anything else that turn.
So that would be, let's say for instance on the first turn you ended up being in combat and you're still alive on the second turn, you then want to move back, that would be falling back?
Yes.
Okay.
And here's a classic example. You may want to use this squad now to shoot this caster, but because he's within 1 inch and he's in combat, you can't open fire on him. So what we would do is choose, in this instance, I'm sure you could probably kill him if you wanted to anyway, but we're going to fall back, say 5 inches. Now he can't do anything else this turn, but great news, you can now decimate him with those shots.
Is the falling back your normal movement characteristic or is it less?
It's up to your normal movement characteristic, and importantly it says that you must end your move more than 1 inch away from the enemy. Okay. So there's no falling back 1/4 of an inch, etc. You've got to go further away from the enemy, or at least up to 1 inch away, more than 1 inch away from the enemy. Now there's a couple of exceptions, or there's one exception actually, which is any unit that flies can fall back and still shoot. But that's the only thing you're allowed to do. You're still not allowed to assault or anything else.
So they don't quite follow the same rules as a normal infantry squad?
No, no. And even with flyers, there's some additional rules which actually, for instance, if this particular flyer constitutes as airborne, it has the special rule airborne, which means it cannot assault models, nor can it be assaulted. So, you know, you could be within 1 inch, I'm not restricted, I can fall back or move on, etc. And, you know, I can do whatever I want, shoot, you know, those kind of things. So that's really useful. You know, let's have a think about some of the flying monstrous creatures who are tied down in combat. You're going to be able to just hop away from that combat, and if you've got shooting attacks, fire into that unit, and then your support units can also fire into that unit. It's going to be a really effective...
That would also mean that if the flyer was in combat, and it's not got many hull points left, well, not hull points, how many, not many wounds left. Wounds, I've got to remember that it means it can try and just get out of there. Rather than being bogged down and it's stuck, and it's probably going to be taken off the board, it's get straight out of there.
Hop away. Deal with it some other way. Right, the last thing in then to look at then is advancing. And advancing replaces, for those of you familiar with 7th edition, the run move that used to take place in shooting. And it was always a little bit of a cumbersome mechanism. You know, you moved and then the next phase you could move again. What they've done is just combine it into the movement phase. And it's really, really simple. This unit here has a movement of 6, so let's just reset them back to their original position. And I've decided I don't want to shoot and I don't want to assault my next turn, because that's the limitation with advancing. If you advance, you can't do anything else in that turn. So what I want to do is take them a little bit further. I either want to get them away from trouble, or I want to get them closer to an enemy much further away. I roll a d6, and let's say magically I roll a 6, and let's face it, how often do I roll a 6? That means these can now move up to 12 inches. Still bound by the rules though, can't go within 1 inch of an enemy model, it can't move any more of the base, more than 12 inches.
Advancing would possibly be worth doing for a combat army then. If they haven't really got any shooting at all, they want to be getting across the board quickly, so you would advance in your movement as well.
Yes, but bear in mind,
you can't
shoot or charge. So it really is about covering ground as fast as possible, but it is going to.
You would look at it as if you know there's some cover halfway at the table, it's advancing as quick as you can, get behind there, get some cover, so then move on later
exactly.
on.
And we've already seen from some of the rules, there may be some unit rules and special rules, and you'll need to check your data slates. There's some units may be able to advance and charge as well, which makes them incredibly effective, very fast.
Definitely.
Across the board. Okay, so that covers pretty much what they talk about in the movement phase. There's a couple of side notes, and I think one of them probably the most important for movement, which is wobbly model syndrome. And essentially that's just about a bit of gaming etiquette with each other that says, you know, if you can move a model to, the best you could do is say get to the corner of there, and there's a risk that your model's going to fall off and get damaged, then you can shuffle the model on a bit further as long as you agree with your opponent from a measuring point of view, from distance of weapons and shooting. You all remember the actual location because it still counts, but in terms of courtesy, place your model safely so it doesn't get damaged.
You probably wouldn't see that sort of thing on the tournament scene.
No, well, I think it depends on the players, but you're right. Probably people will be watching that pretty cosy. I think I think definitely on the tournament scene, I've seen people use dice markers and things like that to say, well, that's where the front of the base is. Okay, well, I think that pretty much covers everything, you know, from a core rule perspective of movement. If you've enjoyed that, there's a whole series that covers the rest of the phases. Please check those out. And that's it for us. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.